Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When a stubborn farmer finds his only road home blocked by a shiny new HOA gate, he uncovers a web of fraud, forged maps, and a dead man's signature. What starts as a land dispute turns into a full-blown war, and he's not backing down. This time, the dirt fights back. It was just past 7 on a Tuesday morning when I turned off the highway and headed down the dirt road that cut through the pines like a scar. My tires kicked up dust in familiar rhythm as the dawn light filtered through the trees. I'd made the drive 1,000 times. This road wasn't just a shortcut. It was the artery that fed my land, my business, my life. I had just wrapped a delivery run to a restaurant in Redding, a truckload of fresh eggs, tomatoes, microgreens, and honeycomb. Still had the faint citrusy scent of herbs clinging to my jacket, and the radio was playing some classic Waylon Jennings as I rounded the last bend, expecting to see the open field and the start of my property ahead. Instead, I saw a goddamn gate. An automatic barrier gleaming and smug like a freshly waxed SUV at a car show blocked the path. My path. A shiny metal arm stretched across the road, flanked by 2 concrete posts freshly sunk into the ground. Next to it was a sign bolted to a steel plate. Private road, Pine Shadows HOA access only, card required. At first, I thought I had taken a wrong turn, but that was impossible. My land sat at the end of this road. Always had. I threw the truck in park, got out, and stood there for a minute, staring at the gate like it had personally insulted me. I walked up to it. There was a keypad, a camera, and a reader for some sort of proximity card. No buttons to call anyone, just a silent message. You don't belong here. Then came the cherry on top. A man stepped out of a small booth to the side, late 50s crew cut, wearing a polyester security uniform 2 sizes too tight, complete with aviators and a clipboard. You lost? He asked, looking at me like I'd pissed on his lawn. No, I said flatly. This is my road. That gate shouldn't be here. He squinted, clearly unimpressed. If you don't have an access card, I can't let you through. HOA policy. You'll have to contact the board. I am the board, I said, because this road is mine. Been mine since I bought the property back in '08. This isn't part of your subdivision. He snorted. According to our new map, this section's within HOA security perimeter now. New map? I asked, my voice starting to rise. Buddy, you can redraw the goddamn earth on a napkin. Doesn't mean it changes property law. He shrugged. Talk to the HOA. I'm just doing my job. I stared at him for a long second, then got back in my truck, drove in reverse until I could turn around, and took the long route home, a 20-minute detour through the Southern Fire Road. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from rage. When I got to my property, 20 acres of hard-earned, beautiful Northern California soil, I parked, walked inside, poured myself a cup of coffee, and pulled the file from my office drawer. The easement deed, a private right-of-way recorded in 1997 affirming that the dirt road was my legal property, with limited neighbor access, yes, but my ownership, clear as day. I scanned and emailed it to my lawyer, Marcus Del Rain, with the subject line, "Someone's screwing around." 3 hours later, I returned to the gate. This time, I brought a printed copy of the deed, laminated, just for the symbolism. Same security guy, same stupid glasses. I handed him the document. You can show this to Karen Drew, I said. President of Pine Shadows, right? Let her know she's about to have a very bad week. As if summoned by the devil herself, a white Mercedes GLC pulled up on the other side of the gate. Out stepped Karen Drew. Mid-40s blonde bob, business casual pantsuit, and a smugness that radiated like heat off asphalt. She smiled at me like I was a lost dog. "Mr. Hayden," she chirped. "Oh, good. I was hoping we'd run into each other. I didn't run into you. You blocked my property with a gate." She tilted her head. "Well, that depends on your definition of property. After a routine HOA infrastructure audit, we determined this road was mistakenly excluded from Pine Shadow's original access map. We've simply corrected that oversight. You're within our boundaries now." "No, I'm not." She clicked her tablet, pulled up a digital map. "We've submitted the revised outline to the county planning office. Given the public safety concerns, this is now part of our secured zone, and with that comes certain responsibilities, of course. Upkeep fees, design compliance, monthly dues. There's also a one-time integration fee of $11,700. I laughed. It wasn't a chuckle. It was the kind of laugh that happens right before a man snaps. "You're out of your damn mind." Karen's smile didn't budge. "If you refuse to cooperate, you'll be considered non-compliant. We'll have no choice but to pursue legal remedies." Right on cue, a sheriff's cruiser pulled up from the direction of the South Road. I had called them earlier, hoping someone with a badge would knock some sense into this farce. Deputy Wallace stepped out. I knew him. He used to pick up eggs for me for his wife's baking business. He looked at me, then at the gate, then at Karen. "Well, this is something," he muttered. "What's going on here?" I gave him the rundown, showed the deed. Karen tried to interrupt. Wallace raised a hand. "Okay," he said. "So, it looks like you both got paperwork. But here's the thing. I can't decide who's right. That's not a law enforcement matter. It's civil. You'll have to take this to court." "Are you serious?" I asked, voice low. He sighed. "Wish I wasn't. But unless someone's breaking in or trespassing, we don't take sides." Karen gave me a tight smile like she'd just won. As the cruiser pulled away, I stood at the gate, watching her drive off behind it. The sun was higher now. The dust shimmered behind her tires, and all I could think about was this. They'd built a wall on my land, and they thought I'd just walk away. 2 days. That's how long I tried to play nice. I took the long detour, burned through extra fuel, watched my fresh produce sit in the back of my truck longer than it should have, all because some suburban dictator had decided my land was a chess piece she could move at will. I told myself I'd give the sheriff's civil dispute route a chance. Maybe the county would fix it fast. But patience is a luxury, and mine ran out by Thursday night. The stars were just fading when I loaded the truck again. Another delivery day. Another long detour. My shoulders ached from tossing hay bales the night before. My boots were still wet from hosing down the stables. That little voice in the back of my head whispered that I shouldn't even be doing this run because I wasn't sure I'd make it back through without losing half the morning. So I decided to test the gate again. One more time. Before I rerouted the entire business around a problem I didn't create. When I pulled up, the same security guard stood beside his booth, sipping coffee from a stainless steel mug like he owned the place. He didn't move when I rolled down my window, just stared with that rules are rules stare that people use to avoid thinking for themselves. "I'm coming through," I said. "No card, no access," he replied. I stepped out of the truck, hands open, calm as a monk. "Let me be perfectly clear," I said. "This road belongs to me. I've shown the deed. You are trespassing on my property. This is your last warning." He blinked, slowly, then raised his radio to his mouth as if I'd just robbed a Costco. A black SUV pulled up behind the gate, same Mercedes as before, but tonight she brought backup. Out stepped Karen, flanked by 2 larger security officers who looked like they'd been hired strictly for their neck circumference. "Well," she said, smiling like she was welcoming me to a bake sale, "Mr. Hayden is back." "Remove the gate," I said, my voice flat enough to cut glass. She cocked her head. "You're making this much harder than it needs to be. Compliance would save you so much time and trouble." One of her guards stepped forward and jabbed a finger toward my truck. "Show your ID," he barked. "I don't have to show you anything," I replied. "This is my road, my property, and you're blocking lawful access." "Then turn around," he said, puffing up like a rooster, "or I'll physically remove you." That was a mistake. I didn't even think. My body just did what 12 years of Army Rangers built into my bones. The guy shoved me, and before he could blink, I had his arm twisted behind his back and his face pressed against the hood of my truck. He let out a shout that sounded more offended than hurt. The second guard froze, electrical stun gun halfway drawn. Then he remembered he was on camera. My camera. Because, unlike them, I planned ahead. A red light blinked from the tree line where I had a wireless surveillance unit pointed straight at the road. "Whoa," I said sharply, not loosening my grip. "Put that thing away unless you're fully prepared to explain to a court why you tased the landowner on his own property." Karen's face lost that smug shine, panic flickering behind her eyes. She stepped back like I'd grown horns. "You're attacking my employee," she shrieked. "I'm restraining a man who assaulted me," I corrected. I pulled out my phone with my free hand and dialed the sheriff's office. The deputies arrived faster this time. 2 patrol trucks, lights strobing against the dusty dawn. The moment they stepped out, the second security guard scrambled to holster his stun gun like he'd never touched it. I explained everything calmly. The shove, the stun gun, the deed, the boundary markers, the video. One deputy asked if my cameras recorded audio too. They did. He nodded once and turned to the guards. "Put your hands behind your backs," he said. "What?" The guard under my grip squeaked. "Do it," the deputy repeated. The cuffs snapped shut, one click, then another. Karen sputtered. This is outrageous. They were defending community property. The deputy looked at her like she'd claimed to own the Pacific Ocean. "Ma'am, according to the deed Mr. Hayden just showed us, you're on his land. You'll want to stop talking." She didn't listen. She never did. But the deputies didn't care. They loaded the two guards into the back of separate cruisers and radioed for transport. One of them asked if I wanted paramedics, since the first guard kept whining about his shoulder. I declined. The man's pride was hurt more than anything else. Karen pointed her polished finger right at my chest. "You are escalating this," she hissed, low enough that only I could hear, "and I will make you regret it." "Lady," I said, stepping closer so she could smell the sweat and hay on my shirt, "you already made me regret it." The gate stayed closed. The road stayed blocked. The deputy gave me the same line as last time. Civil dispute, courts, lawyers, paperwork. He encouraged me to keep filming everything. As they drove away, Karen shouted after me, "Everyone knows what you did. You're dangerous." I stood there watching the rising sun burn through the morning mist. My delivery schedule was shot to hell. My patience was dead and buried. But my resolve, that was just waking up. I called Marcus, my lawyer. "Time to go on offense," I said. He didn't ask why. He just said, "Come to my office. Bring everything you've recorded." The security guy from the booth stared as the police cars disappeared. Without his muscle backup, he suddenly seemed very small. I didn't look at him again. I climbed back into my truck, jaw clenched tight enough to crack a molar, and took the long road home. That gate might still be standing, but the people behind it had no damn idea who they'd just picked a fight with. Friday morning, I woke up to the sound of a diesel engine outside my bedroom window. For a half second, I thought the HOA had sent another goon squad, but it was just the feed truck pulling in early. Still, my hand went instinctively to the .45 caliber in my nightstand, just in case. I was already dressed and halfway through coffee when Marcus called. "Something weird came in this morning," he said. "No small talk. You're gonna want to see it in person." I drove straight to his office. A 2-story converted firehouse downtown tucked between a bakery and an auto shop that never seemed to fix anything. Marcus met me in the lobby with a manila envelope and a face that said he'd been sitting on a hand grenade for the last hour. We went into his office. He closed the door and dropped the envelope on the table like it was toxic. "That," he said, "is what the HOA sent me in response to our cease and desist." I opened it and pulled out a 6-page document with Pine Shadow's HOA letterhead, stamped and notarized. The headline hit me like a brick. "Termination of Historical Easement Access. County Compliance Approved." It claimed that the easement, the one my entire business relied on, had been annulled under a revised zoning measure adopted last year. Attached was a map that now labeled the road Pine Shadow South Corridor. The document was signed electronically by one Gregory Stanfield, registered civil engineer and acting zoning consultant. Marcus tapped the signature line. Gregory Stanfield. Recognize the name? I didn't, but the title checked out, until Marcus dropped the next line like a lit match. "He's dead, Miles." I blinked. "Come again." Gregory Stanfield died 4 years ago. Cancer. His license was retired and flagged in the state registry, but this document has a fresh digital signature dated 6 months ago, after the zoning amendment supposedly passed. I stared at the page like it was going to confess. "Someone faked a signature using a dead man's digital ID?" I asked. "Worse," Marcus said. "Someone used a revoked ID inside a government filing system that should have kicked it out automatically. That suggests either gross incompetence or collusion." I leaned back in the chair, my fists clenched. "And the county approved it?" "Looks like it. Rubber stamped. Probably some intern just clicking approve on backlog requests without reading them." I didn't know whether to laugh or start throwing furniture. Marcus pulled up a database on his screen. "We're filing a request today for a verification audit. If that doc is fraudulent, and I'm betting my license it is, then we're looking at a Class C felony, minimum 5 years, and not just for whoever submitted it, anyone who used it knowingly. Also liable. And Karen's name is all over it," I said quietly. "Bingo." We filed the request. Marcus submitted a formal challenge to the zoning office. I called the county clerk myself and demanded a certified copy of the original 1997 easement deed. Took an hour to get routed through 5 people. but I finally got a hold of an old-timer named Beverly who actually knew what she was doing. "Oh, honey," she said when I explained the issue, "that easement's solid as the Constitution. Private ownership, recorded July 3rd, 1997. Says here, non-transferable, non-revocable without judicial order or majority agreement by all parties to the easement. That'd be you. And me alone. Yup. You got neighbors who can use it, but they can't revoke it, and sure as hell can't seize it. Can you send me a certified scan? Already on it. By noon, I had the original deed, time-stamped and sealed, sitting in my inbox. I printed 4 copies, laminated one, and mailed another straight to the sheriff's office. Meanwhile, Marcus had already sent a legal notice to the HOA requesting full documentation of any claimed zoning changes and the identity of who uploaded the termination order. Around 3 that afternoon, we got an answer, not from the HOA, but from a nervous county employee named Jenna who'd seen the audit request hit her desk. She called Marcus directly. I think something's wrong with the file," she said on speaker. "The login credentials on the termination document trace back to an IP address that was deactivated over a year ago. It's not in our current system." "Meaning?" Marcus asked. "Meaning someone used an old admin account, probably one that should have been scrubbed, to insert a fraudulent termination notice into the zoning archive. It's not just a fake document. It's a planted fake, made to look like it came from inside the system." Marcus gave me a look across the desk. The wheels were turning. "This just went criminal," he said quietly. That night, I sat on my porch watching the sun crawl down behind the oaks. The gate was still up, the road was still blocked, but the illusion was breaking. They hadn't just overstepped. They'd crossed a line into felony territory and left muddy boot prints all over the crime scene. Karen wasn't going to walk away from this. Not now. Not after dragging a dead man into it. By Monday, Marcus had turned his office into a war room. Documents on every wall, zoning maps, tax records, HOA filings. We were chasing patterns now because one fake document doesn't happen in a vacuum. Someone went through the trouble of forging a county filing with a dead engineer's credentials. That meant it wasn't just about me. It was bigger, rotting from the inside. Marcus's paralegal, Gina, sharp as hell and fluent in 3 code books, started combing the public database for similar zoning adjustments around Pine Shadows over the last 3 years. I brought coffee and donuts, trying not to pace a hole in the carpet. By noon, she had something. "Found 2 more private access roads," she said, pointing to the screen. "One up on Briar Hill Drive, the other on Foxpath Lane. Both show original private ownership, then magically shift into HOA jurisdiction last year, right around the same time yours got reclassified." I leaned over her shoulder. The maps weren't even subtle. The old plots had clear easement boundaries. The new ones just swallowed them whole, with new lot lines drawn in HOA's favor, like someone had done it freehand in MS Paint. Marcus called the other 2 owners. One didn't pick up. The other, a woman named Kathy Kim, called back within 15 minutes. I could hear her voice through Marcus's speakerphone, shaking with rage, not fear. "You too," she said. "I've been dealing with this crap since March. They told me my driveway was within HOA control now. I told them to pound sand. Then I got a letter saying I owed $6,000 in unpaid dues and that my shrubs violated aesthetic ordinances. It's not even their property." I drove to her place that afternoon. Mid-50s, Korean-American former nurse. Her land sat on a ridge overlooking the Pine Valley. Clean, well-kept, no nonsense. She made us tea and brought out a binder 2 inches thick with correspondence from the HOA. "They tried to fine me for having a wooden mailbox," she said flatly. "Then they said my deck needed to be compliance stained." "That a real term?" "Nope, made it up." She flipped to a letterhead that matched the ones I'd seen, then another. Then copies of redrawn boundaries with the same engineer signature, Gregory Stanfield. Dead man was busy for a ghost. Later that week, Marcus managed to get in touch with the 3rd owner, Lewis Patterson, Vietnam vet. Still ran a horse sanctuary on his land. When we met him, he had a .22 caliber on his belt and a stare like sandpaper. "They came out here last summer," he said. "Tried to tell me my fences had to be replaced with community standard barriers. I told them the only barrier they'd find was the end of my boot." Turns out, Lewis had also been pressured to accept HOA jurisdiction in exchange for lowered utility rates and priority snow removal. He refused. 2 months later, someone slashed his water line. Thought it was kids, he said. Now I'm not so sure. The pattern was crystal clear. HOA, or at least a few people inside it, were running a land grab scheme. Not through bulldozers, but through maps, forged documents, fake fees, and bureaucratic inertia. They targeted unaligned landowners, applied pressure, then folded their property into HOA boundaries using doctored filings and ghost credentials. All of it looked official, unless you knew what to look for. Back in Marcus's office, we laid it all out on a whiteboard, the names connected like a conspiracy web. At the center, Karen Drew, president of the Pine Shadows HOA. Below her, 2 other board members, Chris Miller, a real estate agent, and Wendy Alvarez, who worked in community engagement, whatever the hell that meant. Both had signed several of the boundary adjustment letters. All 3 had ties to the same digital notary firm that processed the Stanfield documents. And then came the kicker. Gina dug up property tax filings for Karen. Last year, her house had been refinanced. The lender listed her expanded parcel size as justification for a higher valuation. Translation, she used the fake boundary lines to get a better rate and increase her home equity. That wasn't just unethical, that was mortgage fraud. We filed a formal complaint with the county assessor's office. Marcus also sent a packet of everything, maps, fake docs, witness affidavits, to the local DA. He didn't expect a fast turnaround, but if someone there had any spine left, they'd see this wasn't just civil nonsense. It was criminal enterprise. To cover our asses, we made backups of every file and couriered copies to 2 different law firms as fail-safes. Then we held a quiet meeting at my place with Kathy and Lewis. We sat out by the fire pit, drank lukewarm coffee, and reviewed the game plan. We sue them jointly, Marcus explained. You're not alone anymore. We file for damages, demand removal of fraudulent documents, and request injunctive relief against the HOA and every named officer. Lewis grunted. You really think they'll back down? No, I said, but I think we're done playing defense. We clinked coffee cups like they were beer mugs. It wasn't over, not even close. But the shadows didn't feel quite so thick anymore, because now, at least, I wasn't the only one fighting back. We filed the lawsuit on a Tuesday. It was 317 pages long, bound in black, with exhibits, affidavits, and attachments that stacked like bricks in a wall. Marcus marched into the courthouse like a man delivering payload. The front desk clerk raised her eyebrows when she saw the title, Hayden Kim and Patterson versus Pine Shadows Homeowners Association, et al. We were suing for $2.5 million in damages. Loss of business income, obstruction of lawful access, reputational harm, fraudulent filings, civil conspiracy, the works. The moment the filing hit the public docket, the quiet ended. First came the Facebook posts. HOA community groups lit up with doctored photos of me. Blurry screenshots from my security camera footage, cut to look like I was assaulting the guards. One caption read, "This man attacked HOA employees without provocation." Is this who we want in our community? Then came the flyers, printed in color, stuffed into mailboxes, taped to light poles. Warning, Hayden Farm under investigation. Approach with caution. No logo, no signature, just anonymous garbage. But it worked. A few of my restaurant clients started backing out, claiming public perception concerns. One sent me an email that said, "Love your produce, but we can't afford to be in the news." Then came the knock on my door. It was after midnight. I'd just come in from reinforcing the barn fence. My back ached, and my boots were still caked in mud. The dogs barked before I heard it. That sharp rap of someone who doesn't expect to be welcomed. I opened the door with my hand on the frame. No shotgun, not yet. A cardboard box sat on the porch. No note. Inside, my mailbox. Charred, bent, still warm. I didn't call the sheriff. I emailed the photo to Marcus and threw the box in the fire pit. Next morning, I found a 2-foot gash cut into the mesh fencing near my workshop. Not big enough for a person, but big enough for a coyote. Or a message. I repaired it before the horses got curious, then installed a second layer of infrared cameras and a motion-triggered floodlight system that lit up the whole path like a prison yard. I started sleeping with my boots on. Karen, of course, denied everything. When Marcus's office requested a ceasefire agreement, their lawyers laughed it off. Their official response came a day later. A motion to dismiss our case, claiming it was baseless, vindictive, and ungrounded in actionable harm. They even filed for an anti-SLAPP ruling, saying we were harassing them. But the more they fought, the more we dug. One of Marcus's interns tracked down an HOA contractor who'd been hired to update signage and surveillance around Pine Shadows. Turns out he'd also been paid off the books to install fake boundary markers and reroute irrigation lines, including a drain pipe that used to empty toward Kathy Kim's property. They told me to bury it, he said. Didn't ask why. Just paid cash. He was willing to testify, under subpoena if necessary. We built a map. Real boundaries versus fake ones. The difference was staggering. At least a dozen parcels had been unofficially absorbed. Some owners hadn't even noticed, probably assumed HOA growth was legitimate. Others had paid the extortion willingly, afraid to challenge the system. Not us. We held a strategy meeting at Marcus's office. Me, Kathy, Lewis, Gina, and 2 other junior lawyers. We reviewed the deposition schedule, discovery deadlines, and potential witnesses. The trial would take months, but every step now had weight. Every filing, every motion, every affidavit was a hammer chipping away at the illusion. Meanwhile, the harassment didn't stop. Karen filed an official complaint, with the county alleging that I'd constructed a non-permitted barn extension, the same structure that'd been there since I bought the property. I got a visit from code enforcement who left laughing after 5 minutes. Someone sent an email to Lewis's donors, anonymous of course, warning that his horse sanctuary was operating in violation of water safety ordinances. Total lie. But it rattled him. They're trying to outlast us, he said. They won't, I answered. A week later, a drone buzzed over my field, low, loud, hovering. I aimed a spotlight at it and snapped photos. We traced the model to a known HOA contractor who specialized in compliance inspection. When we asked their legal team about it, they called it a routine aerial review. Marcus added trespassing and unlawful surveillance to the complaint. We weren't fighting one person anymore. We were fighting a system that had never expected to be challenged. They had lawyers, money, connections, and a paper trail so dirty it left fingerprints on every damn page. But I had time. And rage. And a camera in every tree. Let them come. The trial started on a rainy Monday morning in a courtroom that smelled like stale coffee and ancient carpet. I sat between Kathy and Lewis in the plaintiff's row, trying to ignore the mildew in the ceiling tiles and focus on the thick stack of notes Marcus had handed me. Across the aisle, Karen Drew sat in a tailored navy suit with pearl earrings and a smugness that hadn't aged well. On either side of her, Chris Miller and Wendy Alvarez, equally polished, equally plastic. Their lawyer, some slick type from Sacramento, leaned into the image. Armani suit, $1,000 briefcase, and a voice like a game show host. The judge, Honorable Rita Bowman, was the real wild card. Mid-60s, sharp as a tack, no-nonsense reputation. She took the bench at 9 o'clock sharp, banged her gavel once and said, "Let's get to it." Opening statements were a study in contrast. Marcus stood calm and steady, voice low but firm. "This is not a case about neighborhood disputes or homeowner etiquette," he said. "This is a case about fraud, about the illegal seizure of private land, about a conspiracy to fabricate documents, mislead public offices, and intimidate lawful property owners into surrendering their rights. My clients are not rebels. They are the victims of a well-organized scheme masquerading as governance. Karen's lawyer painted us as fringe troublemakers, called me a volatile agitator, Kathy an uncooperative neighbor, and Lewis a man with outdated notions of property law. Said we were obstructing community cohesion and undermining legitimate HOA functions." Judge Bowman blinked slowly through. Most of it, the way a lion watches a rat talk tough. Then came the first big hit. Marcus called his first witness, a certified document analyst who'd examined the Gregory Stanfield signature. She walked the court through the fraud step by step. "This signature," she said, pointing to a screen with the document blown up, "was digitally replicated using a cloned certificate, not an original. Furthermore, the notary seal has an inconsistency. It reflects a stamp format discontinued in 2016. Stanfield, as the court is aware, passed in 2021. Karen's lawyer objected. Overruled. The judge stared at the document for a long beat, then wrote something in her notebook. Next came Jenna, the zoning office employee who'd discovered the deactivated IP address. Nervous but solid, she testified under oath that the HOA's termination order had been inserted using credentials from an inactive admin account, one that hadn't existed on the official registry in over a year. Marcus handed the judge a copy of the server logs, highlighted in red. "Your Honor, this wasn't a clerical mistake. This was a breach. Someone with technical knowledge exploited an abandoned access point in a public system to fabricate legal authority. That is premeditated." You could hear the room shift. Even Karen shifted in her chair. But the real bomb dropped later that afternoon. Marcus introduced Exhibit 34, internal HOA communications obtained through discovery, emails between Karen, Chris, and Wendy. One in particular stopped the whole room cold. "Karen, once we consolidate those two ridgelines, we'll have full east to west control. Lewis won't play ball, but if we squeeze utilities, he'll break. Don't worry, I've got zoning in my pocket." Chris replied, "Get Stanfield's cert reissued. I'll handle the survey maps." Wendy chimed in, "I'll push the newsletter angle. Community beautification project sells better than land grab." Marcus let it sit in silence for a moment. Then he looked at the jury. These aren't neighbors protecting their community. These are opportunists running a hostile acquisition. Karen's face froze in something between fear and fury. Her lawyer objected again. Inflammatory language. But Judge Bowman allowed the statement to stand. And then came the audit. Marcus called the HOA treasurer to the stand. Guy looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Under oath, he confirmed that nearly $78,000 in discretionary funds had been spent by Karen's office without board approval. "Can you detail those expenses?" Marcus asked. Travel reimbursements, luxury accommodations, a Tesla lease, some cosmetic services, out-of-state conference fees." "Out of state?" Marcus leaned in. "To Texas." "Yes." "Was there a conference?" "Not that I could find." Judge Bowman raised an eyebrow. "Ms. Drew, do you have any comment on this?" Karen stood up. "These were strategic expenses, meant to network and expand HOA influence." "In Texas?" the judge asked. Karen paused. "Yes." Someone in the gallery laughed. The judge didn't. "We broke for the day with a storm outside and one inside that courtroom. I walked out into the parking lot with my jaw tight and my boots heavier than they'd ever felt. Kathy hugged me without saying a word. Lewis just said, 'That was round one.' He was right. The trial was just getting started, but we'd drawn blood. By the second week of trial, the courtroom wasn't just a place. It was an open wound. Local press started filing in. A reporter from the Shasta County Record sat in the back row every day, scribbling notes like he was witnessing a Hollywood trial. Word was spreading, and not in Karen's favor. Public interest meant pressure, and pressure made people crack. On the morning of day 10, something shifted. Marcus walked into the courthouse carrying a new folder. He didn't say much, just gave me a quick nod before court started. When the judge took the bench, he asked for a motion to introduce supplemental evidence. "New emails," Marcus said. "Recovered from a cloud backup previously withheld by the HOA under the claim of irrelevance. We believe they demonstrate coordination between the defendants and a former county employee." That caught the judge's attention. The emails displayed for the court revealed direct correspondence between Karen and a junior zoning tech named Bradley Niles. In them, Karen offered compensation in exchange for expedited integration of omitted parcels. Code speak so thinly veiled, it may as well have been blinking neon. One message read, "Appreciate you pushing this through. I know the system isn't always flexible, but with a little help, we can guide this community the right way. Let me know what wine you like. I'll have a bottle sent." Another attached a spreadsheet labeled Parcel Absorption Phases. The final nail? A cell phone video, grainy from a hallway camera in the zoning office. It showed Bradley unlocking an internal workstation after hours, plugging in a USB drive, and leaving 10 minutes later. He'd already skipped town, but the county issued a bench warrant that morning. Karen's lawyer turned pale. Chris Miller kept his eyes on the floor. Wendy Alvarez started crying silently into a tissue. The defense scrambled to stall, but the judge refused continuance. She ordered immediate sequestration of HOA records and instructed a forensic accountant to audit all project spending over the past 4 years. Then Marcus played his final card. "We'd like to recall Mr. Hayden to the stand," he said. I walked up, swore in again, and sat under the glow of courtroom lights. Marcus kept it short. "Miles, has your business suffered as a result of the defendant's actions?" "Yes." "Have you experienced harassment?" "Yes." "Have you been denied legal access to your property?" "Yes." He handed me the laminated 1997 deed. "Is this your original easement agreement?" I held it up. "Yes, sir." "Has any court ever revoked it?" "No." "Is this road currently under any jurisdiction other than your own?" "Not legally." "And did the defendants, without cause or right, obstruct your access, defame your character, and attempt to force you into an association you did not agree to join?" I looked across the room, straight at Karen. "They didn't just try, they built a whole machine for it." Marcus nodded. "No further questions." When Karen took the stand, her tone had shifted. The confidence was gone. She still wore the pearls, still carried that managerial smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. She tried to frame her actions as community protection, as necessary evolution for growth, but the evidence choked those words in her throat. The prosecutor, who had now joined proceedings after the fraud evidence was referred for criminal prosecution, asked one question that sealed it. "Did you, or did you not, instruct your colleagues to falsify the parcel lines on HOA maps without homeowner consent?" She paused. "Too long. On legal advice, I invoke my Fifth Amendment right." Silence. Then Chris invoked his. Then Wendy. Judge Bowman's voice rang like a bell. "Let the record reflect the invocation of constitutional privilege by all three defendants. Outside the courthouse, the sheriff's office made it official. Warrants were issued for conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery of public records, misappropriation of HOA funds, and attempted property seizure through coercive civil action. Karen Drew was arrested on the courthouse steps. She tried to speak to the cameras, something about misunderstood intentions, but the handcuffs clinked too loudly. Chris Miller and Wendy Alvarez were cuffed in the hallway outside the bathroom. The jury deliberated for less than a day. Verdict: unanimous. Liable on all counts. Damages awarded in full. We didn't cheer. We didn't cry. We just stood as the gavel came down, knowing that the storm had finally broken. As we left the courtroom, reporters swarmed. Someone shoved a mic in my face, asked if I had anything to say. I looked at the camera, then at the reporters, then simply said, "Don't screw with people who build their lives from the dirt up. We don't scare easy." 2 weeks after the verdict, I stood in front of the gate with a set of bolt cutters in one hand and a beer in the other. My friends were behind me, Kathy, Lewis, Marcus, Gina, and about 20 others who'd shown up for the occasion. Someone brought ribs. Someone else brought a drone to film it. I didn't ask questions. I just smiled and nodded. The metal gate still bore the plaque. HOA access only, Pine Shadows residents beyond this point. Not anymore. I raised the bolt cutters and clamped them around the first chain. It took 2 seconds and a satisfying clank before it dropped like a dead snake. People cheered. I didn't. Not yet. We unbolted the keypad box next, took turns unscrewing it like a ceremony. Then we dug up the steel anchors, dragged the whole thing into the bed of my pickup, and drove it straight to the scrapyard. The guy behind the counter didn't even blink. "That HOA thing?" he asked. "Yeah." "Right on. That's $23. It wasn't about the money. It was about the noise it made when it hit the scale, a final thud of justice. The next day, I had a new sign mounted at the entrance to the easement. Brushed aluminum, 6 feet tall, bolted into reinforced concrete. It read, "Private Access Road Owner M. Hayden Ho trespassers will be arrested" below it, in slightly smaller font. Another plate. That's what a real mistake looks like. It went viral. The drone footage, the gate coming down, the sign reveal. All of it ended up on social media within 48 hours. Some ex-military guy on YouTube narrated the whole story with a gravelly voice and dramatic background music. Local news picked it up, then state news. Then a national property rights group reposted it with the caption, "This man just made HOA history." Orders from clients came flooding back, even some new ones from out of county. One high-end restaurant in Napa sent me a message. "Saw the video. Love your attitude. We want your tomatoes." I almost framed it. Marcus told me Karen was fighting her sentence, trying to cut a deal by blaming everything on Chris and Wendy. Didn't matter. The DA had her cold. Her assets were frozen. Her house had "for sale by court order" signs staked out front. Pine Shadows HOA was officially disbanded. The association's remaining funds were seized by court order to help pay restitution. The office building they'd operated from now sat dark, windows covered in brown paper. Kathy redid her deck without asking anyone. Lewis rebuilt his fence. taller, redder, and, in his words, about 2 feet more unneighborly. Me? I got back to work. The land didn't care about lawsuits. The horses didn't know anything about Karen Drew. The soil still needed turning. That was the one constant through everything, the rhythm of the farm. I found peace in it again. Purpose. One afternoon, a young couple in a Jeep stopped by the gate. Tourists, maybe. They stared at the new sign for a while, then asked if the road was really mine. Every inch, I said. They asked if the story was true. Every word. They asked if I was the guy who took on the HOA. I paused, then said, no. I'm just the guy who didn't fold. They smiled, drove off. I stood by the sign a while longer. The wind kicked up dust. The gate was gone. The road was mine again. Always had been. And now the world knew it.